Is trap metal real metal? Before you jump to any conclusions about what I just said and the statement I just said, I want you to allow me to put a little bit of food for thought in your mind and sort of go back and forth, because this is a subject that I've seen discussed at great lengths on this platform, but never to this degree with the specific questions that I have to ask you guys. This is going to be a very interactive video because I want to know what your guys' opinions are of this topic and the points that I bring up. So hey review family, keep it tight. My name is Jay Morris, the review guy, reviewing music for the love of music, and I'm back again to bring you another video. When it comes to music in the past few centuries, genre fusions have been aplenty, and they have only grown more consistent and more in-depth throughout the past 3 or 4 decades. Every genre is always looking to innovate, and while you always have elitists and traditionalists trying to stifle that progress and push it back a couple of steps or keep things right where it's supposed to be in their eyes, there are always going to be some bands and some artists that are trailblazers that attempt to take something out of its comfort zone and musically make it something that is greater than what it currently is and larger than the sum of its parts. And while you could make the same argument about a genre like hip-hop, or specifically the one that comes to mind is electronic with its hundreds, dozens upon dozens of offshoots, I feel as if no overarching genre has expanded itself into so many different branches such as metal has. And while many genres like black metal and death metal and grindcore tend to try to stay right in the wheelhouse of where they began, there are so many experimental bands that make all of these subgenres and microgenres, and I think that's what keeps a lot of us hooked on metal as a whole, is how there's always something greater, how there's always something that is trying to reinvent their own envelope and push the envelope up the ante of what they're able to accomplish as musicians. But trap metal has been one of the most polarizing genres that I have seen in all of metal in my time as a metal fan. What is trap metal? Trap metal, as its core definition, is hip-hop music of some kind that tends to gravitate towards more metal-themed instrumentation and vocals. But does it really? I've always thought trap metal as a descriptor is a little bit false. I want to go on the record saying that I am a really big hip-hop fan. That's something I don't really talk about much on this channel, but I love hip-hop, I love hardcore hip-hop, and there are many trap metal artists that I frequent often. Nowadays, a lot of trap metal artists sort of fall into 3 different parties. Either the horrorcore type of trap metal artist with an artist like, say, Backwash, which is more sort of dingy and murky. You have the trap metal artists that tend to be more loud, distorted, demented, screaming at the top of their lungs. Your Bad Lads, your XXXTentacions, I'm even trying to think, Scarlxrd. And then finally you have the more hardcore hip-hop inspired trap metal artists, which will have hardcore hip-hop vocals amidst these trap metal instrumentals. And I'm sure all of you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say trap metal. Distorted, harsh 808s, and massive compositions that are so ear-bursting, treble and bass boosted out to where it's almost a meme, with some vocalists screaming at the ever-living god top of their lungs. Many of these rappers tend to not really have techniques. You can hear it in their vocal styles. It's just unhinged, it's erratic, it's rageful, and there's something exuberant about it that sort of you can't help but feel moved by. Something this aggressive and something this loud and something this angered is just hard not to feel something from. Are many of the lyrics cringy? Yes. Are many of the instrumentals the same? Yes, absolutely. I think trap metal as a whole has been running its wheels through the mud for years at this point. But to be honest, am I the only one that feels like we're stretching the trap metal descriptor as a genre term a bit too thin? Because let's look at what defines trap metal. Most of the time, and this isn't always true because there are plenty of very heavily metal-influenced rappers that do include heavy distorted guitars and percussive elements, but most, if not all, of the trap metal I hear nowadays that is defined as this are led by beats and are led by trap metal instrumentals that are much more centered around the beat and the bass as opposed to any sort of organic instrumentation, which is fine. That's what makes hip-hop hip-hop and what makes metal metal for the most part, and it depends on where you draw the line. Most of the time, I think most of the reason people call it trap metal is the vocals. 9 times out of 10, you have a vocalist without technique just yelling their fucking brains out on an instrumental. But where is the line drawn of where metal starts and where the trap begins? Because that's even another thing. Most of these tracks don't necessarily feel like trap either. In the colloquial sense of what you hear from trap metal doesn't usually follow the typical conventions of that genre either. And obviously it's not the first time a genre hasn't fell in line with where its influences and inspirations come from, but I feel like it as a term is not necessarily, I almost want to say, like false advertising. Because half the time it doesn't feel like trap and it doesn't feel like metal, it feels like its own thing. Because since when do screamed vocals and death growls equal metal and only metal? It's prevalent in other genres, it's been in other genres, and harsh screamed vocals have existed in rock and punk music long before metal became the massive genre it was with all of these offshoots. And even back in the 60s, you were hearing things like the Velvet Underground, which had screamed vocals, and they certainly weren't metal. And to boot, where necessarily is the trap? I don't hear the triplet flows, I don't hear the trap booming percussive elements, I hear distorted bass and just hellish bass and harsh 808s and someone doing screamed vocals. And it creates this weird dichotomy, because I think it's why people both love and dislike trap metal if you're a metalhead. Because you either really dislike it because it's so detached from metal and it doesn't necessarily feel like metal, or you really like it because it boasts some of the same feelings and gives you the same emotions as metal with the aggression and the heavy production value. Now, I want to also say I'm leaving pretty much all of the artists and bands that actually do have metal instrumentation out of it, because surely those are trap metal if that's what we're defining them as. If you have heavy, distorted electric guitars and heavy percussion and drum work and screamed vocals, it is much closer to the definition of what people consider metal. But I want to turn this over to you guys. Do you think trap metal is metal? And do you even think it's trap? Are artists like Bad Lad and Scarlxrd and XXXTentacion, whether they're influenced or not, actually metal artists? And what about an artist like Nothing Nowhere with a track like Death? Are these artists metal? That's my question for you guys. I guess it's just some food for thought and an interesting topic I thought of, so let me know down in the comment section below what your opinions on the topic are. I can't wait to hear the discussion that we have. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is, my name is Jay Morris, the Review Guy, and I'm signing off saying farewell.